اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق الخاتم لما سبق الناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره مقدار العظيم. نحمده الذي قد قال في كتابه العزيز إنما إلهكم الله الذي لا إله إلا هو وسع كل شيء علما. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who said in his book, your God is only Allah, except for whom there is no deity. He has encompassed all things in knowledge. Encompassed all things in knowledge. Ta'ala. One of the things that Allah has given us in his book, the directive to remember him. And he said this type of remembrance is related to the use of our tongue or the use of the tongue that's in our hearts. A command. So for example, he said, وَمَا تُقَدِّمُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ تَجِدُوهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ خَيْرٌ وَأَعْظَمُ أَجْرًا وَاسْتَغْفِرُوا اللَّهَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. He commanded us, for example, to say istighfar. When a person says istighfar, the sins that they collect as they are going to collect, being human beings, it's impossible not to, they fall off. By asking Allah for forgiveness, they fall off. May Allah forgive all of it. And Allah also says, talking about his unimaginable practice, إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتُهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا صَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ وَسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. He also says that verily Allah and his angels are sending salutations upon the Prophet, peace be upon him. And he commands and says, oh you, so follow suit, so send salutations upon him, peace be upon him. Like this. We also find that God mentions, فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ. Remember me and I will remember you. And these three different commandments, and these three different promptings, we find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us something magnificent. For those who believe, there's already a leap ahead of all people. And the first one, Allah asks us Allah commands us to ask for forgiveness. When we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness, the ultimate forgiveness that we can ask for is forgiveness for our own existence. Why? Because when you and I forward our own existence, we forward ourselves before Allah's existence. We see ourselves before we see Allah. And wallahi, that's not the way it is. We see ourselves before we see Allah. But Allah saw everything before everything was. And his vision is the vision of reality. And our vision is simply something that comes and goes. When a person says istighfar like this, realizing the essential sin of forwarding themselves, when that sin is erased by true istighfar, because istighfar has levels, there's nothing left but salah ala nabi and la ilaha illallah. When someone says, and salah ala nabi and la ilaha illallah, both of these are contained in la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Why is that? Because the only one who is sending salah is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his angels. There's no you and I in that. إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ. This is called tawheed. The first strike is myself, remove myself. There's the kalima. What is the kalima for? The kalima is for tawheed. How is tawheed manifested? Firstly, we see in this salah ala nabi. Because Allah is the one doing that. Allah and his angels, by his command, is sending salah. Immediately, the salah points to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's presence, because he says, as we say, Allahumma. When you and I say Allahumma, what do you think happens to you and I after that? When you and I call on Allah and say Allahumma, what do you think happens? You say Allahumma, where's Abdul Latif after that? When you and I call on Allahumma, we're simply locking back into that reality that is above and beyond all understanding. Inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. We're getting in sync with that reality. Who's the one then that calls, who manifests La ilaha illallah? Who's the one who does that? Is it anyone other than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? The one who manifests tawheed, because tawheed is not something that Allah does. Tawheed is not something. Why? Because tawheed literally means to make something one. Allah is not making anything one. Allah is one. It's you and I that have to correct ourselves. It's the human being who has to correct him or herself to make Allah one. That's called tawheed. And by doing that, you and I arrive into the very essence of what it means to be alive, to know, to be in sync with being, to be in sync with reality, to be in sync with the thing that you and I are looking for, which is called permanence. Allah gives that to us in those commandments in the Quran. It's a very easy path. But there's another way. And this is what Allah is so merciful to us, because how many people have Islam? How many people have Iman? How many people have ihsan? How many people have deen whatsoever in their lives? How many people even know who Allah is? In other words, how would these individuals be able to arrive to something, anything remotely close to this, to be able to consider the idea? Well, this is why Allah gives us the life that you and I live in. If you look, for example, the presence of imperfections is the sign that perfection exists. The presence of imperfections. Now we're talking to just the human being. We're not talking to the Muslim, non-Muslim, kafir, non-kafir, with all the other 1,001 categories for people. Just the human being. The human being, you and I. If you look around, you will find that the presence of imperfections is a sign that perfection exists altogether. If you look in my world and you look in your world, there are nothing but a stockpile of imperfections. And to start pointing them out would just waste our time. But we can. For example, these rows are terrible. These rows are not so good. They're disturbing. That's an imperfection, right? The Imam, the way that whatever his garb on, something's not right, right? No offense, but the interior design, I don't know. And even if it was down to the T and everything was seemingly perfect, it would still be imperfect, because perfection is not something that we even know in this world. I'll give you an example. Can you think of a perfect circle? Can you think of a perfect circle that you've seen in life? Can you show me a perfect circle somewhere in life? If you look at that perfect circle, what you think it might be, and you start to do the measurements, you will find that there is some way that one of the sides of that circle is not entirely the exact distance from the center as another side. You will find that it's impossible to actually draw a straight line. You can't actually draw a straight line. You can't do it. If you start to measure, you will find there are slight imperfections. But yet there's this perfect circle, there's this perfect line, there's this idea of perfection that you and I have that we've never seen in the world, that you and I are constantly calling on. This is called an idea. You and I have ideas. These ideas are not in the world. Ideas don't exist in the world. Ideas are things that are floating around somewhere that you and I tap into, but we've never seen it. To bring it back down to earth again. You can't find perfection in this world, but yet you and I are constantly looking for perfection. What does that mean? It means either you and I are insane, or you and I know of a perfection somewhere. If you and I think about perfection itself, and if you think about the imperfections that we have, all this does is call us to start thinking about particular things. Our life is a stockpile of particulars. Our life is a stockpile of this and that, and this and that, and this and that. There are no universals. Just this and that, and this and that. This thing is good, and that thing is bad. This thing is good, that thing is bad. This thing is good, and would you know, that one is also bad. It's just a stockpile of particular things. And all of them, each one of these particulars is completely imperfect. This is what we know. This is what we have experienced. Now, the thing you have to ask yourself is, when it comes to these particular goods that you and I are experiencing in our life, what you and I call good, and what you and I call bad, the extent of their good has a limit, and the extent of their bad has a limit, which means they are themselves imperfect, they have shortcomings. For example, that day when you had a birthday, and someone brought out the cake, and your friends blew it out, and then you went to, I don't know, you went to Wally World, which I wish that place really existed. You went to Wally World, and you had all the rides for free, and you were with all of your friends, and oh my God, then you went to Benihana, the halal one, and right, it was a day that was just unbelievable. But the thing is that did that day last forever? Did that day last for, even as perfect as it might have been, did it last forever? No, it was a shortcoming. In the end of the day, it was a shortcoming. This day will pass. This moment will pass. But we ourselves are looking for perfection. We ourselves are looking for permanence. We ourselves are looking for that which lasts. But lo and behold, every moment of our lives, we find shortcomings. These shortcomings exist in the good, and these shortcomings exist in the bad. Thankfully, they exist in the bad as well. And we know this to be the case. When someone says, hey man, you're not having something, may Allah protect us, something terrible happens. Something really, really bad happens to us. How is it that, what is the best thing you can say to someone? You know, one of the best things, if you don't know, let me help you. If someone's having a really bad time, you don't have to remind them like, well, you know, hell is worse or something like that. It doesn't always help. You might tell them, don't worry, inshallah, it will pass. It will pass. The good thing is that the impermanence of this world has its positive effects too, because those things which we don't like, they also pass. Both are imperfections, particular goods and particular bads. But it's all that you and I know. All we've experienced. It's all that we see. This causes us to have a lack of fulfillment. This causes us to have a lack of fulfillment. This lack of fulfillment is not because we are Muslim, or because we're black, or because we're brown, or because we're white, or because we're rich, or because we live in this area, or don't live in that area, or because we have this education, or don't have that education. The truth is, none of us are being fulfilled. The nature of the world is that it does not supply fulfillment. But again, I ask the question, if that be the case, if the nature of the world is that it does not provide fulfillment, then why in God's name am I trying to find it? Have you ever seen fulfillment? I asked you about that universal. This is another way of explaining it. Have you ever seen fulfillment? Ask yourself, what does fulfillment look like? Where does it live? Because I'm telling you, if we found out where fulfillment lived, it would be a crowded area. Where is fulfillment? How is fulfillment? What's it taste like? Smell like? Well, none of us can describe it. We certainly aren't looking for it. Isn't that the case? But is the world fulfilling? Is there anything about this world that's fulfilling? Is there anything about this world that goes on and on? Again, either I am insane by looking for something which I've never seen, or there's something else happening. I have never in my life met an individual that did not want to be happy. I have not. I have met individuals whose idea of happiness is pretty deranged. I don't think it's going to get them very far. But I've never seen a person who is striving for happiness, is another way of saying fulfillment. I have never not met someone, even someone that just, brothers, move forward please, Sean. I have never in my life met an individual that said to me, Abdul Latif, basically what I'm trying to do is be as miserable as possible. I am trying to max out in misery. Misery is really good. I like being unfulfilled, and I like shortcomings. I'm into it. You'll never meet someone like that. It's not human nature. Human nature is that we want to be what? Happy. Happiness. Now I said in the beginning, the presence of imperfections is a sign that perfection exists. In other words, here we are going through all of this. We're all looking for perfection, but all we have is imperfection. That indicates that perfection must exist, because if perfection, with a capital P, does not exist, then there is no such thing as imperfection. There's no way to gauge that at all. True happiness exists because everyone desires it. The same way true happiness does exist, true fulfillment does exist, because no matter where you live, man, tabarakallah, I've been all over the world. And it's pretty crazy, you know, you go to Senegal, everybody wants to be happy. Wow, I thought, you know, because they speak another language, maybe they had a different aim in life. You know, you go to Singapore, they speak Malay, they speak Hindi, they speak, all English, they speak all types of, they have all kind of languages, foods, cultures, but the thing I found out, which is, lo and behold, everybody is just trying to be fulfilled. Go to England. England is interesting, has a lot of old buildings, people talk kind of funny, they don't shine their shoes, whatever, they do their thing. It's amazing, you go there, everyone's trying to be what? Happy. Is that because of where they live? Is it because of their religion? No, it's a human requirement. But ask yourself again, if happiness is fulfillment, then where is it in this world? And no matter how many times you tell me I'm not going to find it, I will look for it. Is it not the case? But what I find is everything is deficient. Everything is deficient. It's essentially deficient. It just can't do it for me. I can't do it for someone else. A lot of times we have marital problems. What are the marital problems about? A lot of times it's because someone's trying to make someone else that thing do it for me. Fill my void. And the other person's saying, well, I would, but I'm waiting for you to do it for me. So, like when you fulfill me, I'll fulfill you. Oh, it turns out neither one of us can do that goal. Because we're inefficient. So what you and I are looking for is sufficiency. We want sufficiency. We want the thing, right? We have a saying now, you ain't doing it. Like you're doing it wrong. You're doing that wrong. You're doing it wrong. Like that's not, there's something inefficient about what you're going about, and you can feel it and I can feel it. Well, if you look around, we're doing it wrong. We're doing it wrong, man. We want something, but we're doing it wrong. Don't tell me there's no sufficiency, because I'm over here giving a talk trying to make sure that my point gets across. That's called me trying to strive for sufficiency. Don't tell me that it's not going to happen, or I can't find it, or I should give it up. Because even you trying to tell me that is you're trying to be sufficient so that I understand, right? But what we have to think about is universal sufficiency and particular deficiency. Now, what I said in the beginning was that the person of deen, the person of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah has been given a shortcut through all of this by saying three things: istighfar, salat ala nabi, and La ilaha illallah. But an individual that's not convinced of religion or these kinds of things, or maybe is not practicing, what I'm saying to them is God is merciful. If you open your eyes and you look around, you'll find yourself in the same place as those who are trying to go forward. There's no way out. Universal sufficiency and particular deficiency. Now here is the question you have to ask yourself. Again, if I know particularities, if I understand, in other words, if I am a particular, what kind of particular am I? I am a particular of the human race, meaning I am an individual of the human race. That means there's a universal there. You cannot call me a particular unless there be a universal. It doesn't work. Now, in the same way, when it comes to this life and the life that we're living in, you and I cannot designate particular happiness, particular things that make us sufficient, unless there be an absolute universal happiness, a universal efficiency that itself must be what? Itself must be sufficient. This thing, what you and I are aiming for, whether we realize it or don't realize it, this thing, this entity, it cannot have deficiencies. It must be entirely sufficient in order to be that aim that you and I are looking for. In other words, there's something planted inside of us. It's called memory. And we remember what perfection is. And we remember what sufficiency is. And we remember what the universal is. Qala, alastu bi rabbikum qalu bala. He said, am I not your Lord? And we all answered, indeed. What does that mean? It means religion is not a pamphlet you give someone or an argument you make with someone. Religion is reality. There is a universal, a sufficient, an all, a complete, that every soul is looking for and trying to find it in every single particular. But those individual particulars cannot give them what they need. This causes us to be unhappy. This thing is called God. May Allah give us Allah. وأقول يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. And I say, O you who believe, fear God. Fearing of God, not like you're running from a tiger in the jungle, but fear of God, knowing His station, knowing what He is, ta'ala. Absolute. Knowing what He is. So we ask Him for forgiveness. Verily He is the one who forgives. لله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق الخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره ومقداره العليم. As we said, the presence of imperfections is the sign that perfection exists. The presence of imperfections is the sign that perfection exists. Now, ask yourself about this relationship between what's perfect and what's not perfect, and the indications that we have been trying to make. What is it on the planet, or rather, should I say, giving you a hint, who is it on the planet that is able to recognize perfection and imperfection? Who is it on the planet that is able to recognize, to make tamyiz, to distinguish between these two kinds of goals? Is it a giraffe? Is it a pony? Is it a ladybug? Is it a hootenanny? If you guys never heard of a hootenanny, go to Wikipedia. Is it a hootenanny? No, man, it's the human being. The human being is the individual, the creature that has the capacity to recognize its own deficiency. And in recognition of that deficiency, is able to make a choice to strive, to go towards that which is perfect. In other words, if we say the presence of imperfections is the sign that perfection exists, then the greatest sign of God's existence then is you and I. The greatest sign of God's existence then is you and I, because we're the most imperfect of imperfects. We're the most lacking. We're the most lost. We're the most wavering. We're the most incomplete. We're the most downtrodden. We're the most broken. We're the most searching. We're the most unfulfilled. If you don't believe that, well, mashallah. I was going to name a few things, but I think we get the point. This is a sign of the nobility that Allah has given you and I. Allah has given us a nobility. He's given us a nobility because we are searching for sufficiency itself, and we will never give up. You and I will never give up looking for sufficiency. You and I will never give up looking for perfection. You and I will never give up looking for fulfillment. That's why the Prophet says that the son of Adam, he will not be satisfied until he tastes the dirt of the grave. Many of us would take that in the negative way. That's true in a negative sense too. But it's also true in the positive. That it's true about us, that we will strive until the dirt is in our mouth. We will strive. We will strive and we will strive. But the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what is it that I am striving for? Am I striving for this or that thing that is incomplete? Maybe even more incomplete than myself, to try to find God? No, man, I'm Muslim. I pray. You think that stops this from happening?
No.
That's called rhetoric, my man. You just... You and I, in other words, every single person, for example, you see people getting on the highway and they're going to their work, it's 8:45 in the morning, everybody's upset, San Francisco is terrible like this, the Bay Area is terrible in this way. Believe it or not, every single person that got out of their bed and got themselves their coffee and got their morning donut, or whatever it was, their ritual, and put their butts into the car and moved towards their job, they're only looking for Allah. They are looking for Allah. Because they're looking for their fulfillment. They're looking for happiness. They're trying to maintain it as well. And the only one who can maintain is Allah. The only one who is sufficient is Allah. La ilaha illallah. That's it. Show me another aim, objective. Show me another goal. Show me something else that is in itself not entirely, essentially deficient. You cannot, because you and I only know this world in our heads. But our heart remembers something else. And thank God that we're in this building. Thank God that we're in this building. Thank Allah that you are in this building. Because that's nothing but grace. May Allah grace everyone. So this God that we're talking about, this God is not a God of your and my ambitions, in the sense that we can just create him and make him some kind of way. Well, my God is very slender. Or, well, my God is a happy God. My God is one that loves everybody. My God has daisies. This is not, Allah is above and beyond all of these things. But one thing that you and I know for sure is that He is the goal of happiness. And He is the goal of fulfillment. As we said, everyone seeks sufficiency. Sufficiency is happiness. Happiness is God. Happiness is not an emotion. Many people, they say, brother, you should smile more. I say, I agree, it's a sunnah, but that doesn't mean I'm happy. Happiness is not an emotion. Happiness is fulfillment. Happiness is contentment. Happiness is not wanting anything more than what you have. People say, I'm really depressed, things are down. Do you know the fastest way to have tranquility is? The fastest way to have tranquility is to simply not want anything more than what's happening. Seeing Allah in the moment, that takes something. That means you and I have to realize that what it is that I envision and think to be perfect is not the case. But what Allah does and what Allah is and how Allah is perfection. The problem is, where am I? Would I take the same searching that causes me to try to find perfection to be the same searching that I turn around and use against God? Well, I don't really know what's happening. All I know is that this is really shaking my faith. This shaking my faith and that shaking my faith, because I don't see perfection in that. I don't see fulfillment in that. The same Allah that you and I are searching for, which is even involuntarily, we don't even realize it. The same Allah that's giving us those things is the same Allah that's giving us trials that we perceive to be trials. But don't you know that in that also He's giving us Himself? Because when I let go of things in this world, of the imperfect, and I let go, and I just let go of it, I lose the grip on it, I start looking inside. Right? Looking inside is looking up. Those tests and those trials are the best thing that ever happened to me, because it makes me for sure that I'm not going to get sufficiency in this thing. I'm not going to get sufficiency in this guy. I'm not going to get sufficiency in that girl. I'm not going to get happiness in this education. I'm not going to get happiness and fulfillment in this situation. And I'm not going to get happiness and fulfillment in Islam either. Wait. Listen. How many of us have made Islam itself the goal? How many of us have made Islam itself a God? Islam is going to make it better for me. Islam is going to make it better for you. Islam is going to change the whole world. None of Allah doesn't want. How many of us are using Islam itself as a way of seeking fulfillment? Raise your aspiration. Pick the aspiration up higher, because you weren't made for that. You and I were not even made for Islam. You and I are made for Allah. May Allah give us Allah. Everyone seeks sufficiency. Sufficiency is happiness, and happiness is God. Therefore, all that are seeking for happiness are seeking for God. Everyone seeks sufficiency. Sufficiency is happiness. Happiness is God, by definition now. Therefore, all that are seeking for happiness are seeking for Allah. Now this brings us to the other side. What does He say? وَلِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ فَأَيْنَمَا تَوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَاسِعٌ عَلِيمٌ. We have taken a ride in this khutbah from particular to universal. We went from us, the particular, to Allah. And He Himself makes Himself known this way. And to Allah belongs the east and west. And to Allah belongs the east and west. So wherever you might turn, there is the face of Allah. Indeed, Allah is all-encompassing and knowing. All-encompassing. All-knowing. فَأَيْنَمَا تَوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. And to Allah belongs the east and the west. In other words, when I turn my head this way and I turn my head that way, looking for sufficiency, looking for efficiency, looking for fulfillment, when I look this way and I look that way, looking for those things, they belong to Allah. They belong to Allah. Now I don't know about you, but if I have a problem when I go to a store and there's the employee and there's a problem, I don't want to talk to him. I want to talk to the manager. This here belongs to Allah. This here belongs to Allah. And He is the one that gives each thing the notion that we receive in our minds of efficiency. So why not go to the one who gives efficiency Himself? He's telling you here, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ, and for Allah is the east and west, and north and south, and front and back, and left and right, and in and out, and ظاهر and batin. Lillah. Al-awwalu, wal-akhiru, wal-zahiru, wal-batinu, the first, the last, the manifest, the hidden. Ask yourself about that. The first, the last, the manifest, the hidden. Allah. Where are you gonna go that Allah is not there? And you and I know that because we're looking for Allah everywhere. In efficiency. Al-awwalu, wal-akhiru, wal-zahiru, wal-batin. The first, the last, the manifest, and the hidden. My nature is to look for efficiency in all these things, and He's telling you they belong to me. Inna Allah wasi'un alim. And verily, فَأَيْنَ تَوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. So wherever you turn, there is the face of Allah. Indeed, Allah is all-encompassing. All-encompassing. And He is knowing. So they say, as the hadith comes, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are built by intentions. In my action, I don't intend paradise. In my action, I don't intend escape from the hellfire. In my action, I don't intend rewards. In my action, I don't intend closeness to Allah. No. In my action, I don't intend love of Allah. No. In my actions, I intend Allah. I intend Allah. I don't care if Allah wants to give me Himself in any way He wants to give me Himself, but Allah, give me yourself. Because I want efficiency. I want it all. And I will spend my life in this life looking for that thing. Whether I believe or whether I don't believe. Am I right or am I wrong? Wallahi, you know I'm right. And that's why the Prophet said to upon him, أَفَلَا أَكُنْ عَبْدًا شَكُورًا. Should I not be a thankful slave? Because he knew what he had. May Allah give us enlightenment and show us what we have. And I advise you and myself, to be God conscious. Be God conscious. Raise that consciousness. Look into your heart and see what's lying there. That heavens can't contain me, and the earth can't contain me, but the heart of my believing slave can contain me. Who do you think is the one talking to you? Oh no, that's grandma. That's not grandma. اللهم اغفر جميع المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله ونحمد الله الحمد لله والعبد لله وقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.